when he was hosting PTI just yesterday. I know they led off the show with the Golden State Warriors. We're very happy to welcome in here to Damon and Ratto, Frank Isola from ESPN, from SiriusXM NBA Radio as well. Frank, thank you. With the New York Knicks in town, it's always good to have you stop on by. But before we get to tonight's opponent, we kind of wanted to start with your prescription to what is ailing the Golden State Warriors right now.
Well, how are you guys doing? And I think a lot of shows for about the last, 8 years probably led off shows talking about the Warriors. I would say 95% of the time it's all good. This year, not so much. I mean, my thing was, how can anybody take you seriously when you start the season off losing 8 straight, going 0-8 on the road, including some of those opponents? And I think in 6 of those games, they've given up 120 points, and they're not getting it done on the defensive side. Clearly, the younger players haven't done much yet. The guys that left the team, like Gary Payton, they got a Porter, Bielitsa, they gave them a little bit of toughness, which they don't have. And Klay Thompson and Draymond Green are struggling. There's no other way around it. I mean, we've never seen Klay kind of act out like this. That stunt that he pulled in Phoenix when he got ejected from the game, and Devin Booker could not have been more gracious about Klay Thompson afterwards. But the thing, like pointing at his ring fingers, like, you're Klay Thompson. Why are you doing that to like a bunch of knuckleheads on the Warriors bench? I mean, I'm sorry, on the Suns bench. Why even sink to that level? And it does kind of seem like, as well, every game, I mean, you guys would know better than me, it does seem to be, all right, we'll talk about the game, now we have to have a state of Klay Thompson address after every game. That's getting a little tiring, too. And I love the guy as a player. I mean, this year's been a little weird for him, but that's getting a little tired.
I mean, everything's been a little weird. There's no doubt, Frank. And the weirdness, and I don't know, if there's any litmus test that will allow us to actually measure the pH balance of the Draymond Green punch of Jordan Poole. But look, Steve Kerr called that the biggest crisis of his career. And, it in a way does feel a little bit like Draymond might have just punched the chemistry right out of this basketball team.
Well, it's funny. I was out there. Ray's not the only hotshot sports writer that has a radio show. I do a show on Sirius with Brian Scalabrine.
Ooh.
And we were out there the day before the punch, and everything seemed to be hunky-dory. The team had just gotten back from, I think they were in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. And the very next day, that punch happened, and you were hearing this stuff, Jordan Poole's attitude had changed, so that means that he should get punched in the face. I mean, I know we hear about playoff fights all the time, but when you see all that on video, I'm still shocked that the league didn't do anything about it. I can't believe the commissioner was handing Draymond Green his ring on opening night. That whole scene, to me, was a little bit bizarre. And then TNT basically had a tribute video to Draymond, which I also thought was bizarre. But I kind of agree with you. I think you can't tell me that something like that happens at practice. It happens to be a guy that plays Klay Thompson's position. Klay Thompson has kind of been moaning a little bit, and he, comes out publicly and says, how come, people never talk about me coming back from this injury? Draymond Green hasn't played well. There has to be some after effects of that punch. I don't know if you just get past that. And remember, too, after it happened, who's the guy that got paid? It was Jordan Poole. And Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, they're two guys that down the road are looking to get paid as well. So I think there definitely is something going on there. Whether or not it's lingering this long, I have no idea. The one saving grace for the Warriors, when you look at the Western Conference, it's not that good. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics are the class of the Eastern Conference. I don't even think it's close. Maybe Cleveland could do something. But the West is wide open. Phoenix has been good, but they lost Cam Johnson. Chris Paul always gets hurt. And the other teams, I don't know. To me, there's all question marks. So even though the Warriors have been really poor to start the season, it's far from over.
It's 15 games. It's time for concessions. I think you're wrong, Frank. In fact, the one thing that I've always been curious of, because I can't find another example of this, is a team that starts prepping for a season 3 years in advance while they're still trying to play, defend a title with the group they've got. I mean, when the Celtics finally had Bill Russell retire, they didn't all of a sudden have every piece in place for their next title run. They had to go through a fairly long, at least for them, sort of transition. And I'm wondering if the Warriors might have been a little impatient in worrying about the future, and rather than getting some more transitional figures for the second unit, like veterans who could ease the passage in playing time ways, for the young guys who haven't done much.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I also believe that those kind of players are available at some point. There's still a lot of teams that are thinking about the lottery. Utah's gotten off to an amazing start. Would they be looking to do something, I don't know, with Rudy Gay or Mike Conley or Jordan Clarkson? There's always going to be players out there. And I still think the one thing about the Warriors, I do think they can pivot because of some of those young players, and maybe there's a veteran player out there. I know Brian Scalabrine brought up the idea of what about DeMar DeRozan? Chicago's kind of in this position where are they really going? Maybe that's something, if they can get a young player or a draft pick, they would consider doing something like that as well. So that's why I don't think all hope is lost. I still think there are things that can be done. The part that has to concern you, though, is that Klay Thompson hasn't been good, and neither has Draymond Green. Draymond defends. I get all that. But, those guys have been a key part of it, and the one guy that's holding up his end of the bargain has been Steph Curry. He's certainly not getting any help from really anybody else on the roster.
The other question I had, because you've covered this for essentially centuries, how many times have you seen a big man project eventually become a noteworthy big man? And I'm asking specifically in this case about both Wiseman and Kuminga, who were projects when they got them. So, I mean, where are the best examples of success stories out of that?
You know what? There's a lot of people that say you kind of come into the league great, which doesn't mean that as a rookie maybe you might have some moments where you struggle. But, Wiseman, what did he play? 2 college games, and now he's played 50 NBA games. So what's the sample that we have of the guy? Like, what has he ever done? It's almost as if the less he plays, the more, like, his reputation builds. Like, wait until he gets back, because that's what everybody talked about last year during that playoff run. Next year they'll have James Wiseman. Well, when is James Wiseman finally going to do something? I think you're right. There's going to come a point where you're going to have to look at that draft pick and say, you know what? This one didn't work out. And there's a number of guys over the years that get drafted high that are big men that don't pan out. At some point, it has to be on the player. And I know the guys on TNT were saying, you shouldn't send him to the G League. But what's he doing? They're clearly trying to, get the guy to play a little bit more, and obviously to send some kind of message. He called it not, Wiseman said it wasn't a demotion. Young man, that's a demotion. You're the number 2 overall pick at the draft, and you haven't done anything yet. And they need you this year, and you haven't done anything. So it seems like in a lot of ways it's a desperate move, but maybe it's something to, light a fire under him. But I agree with you. At this point of his career, shouldn't he be doing something? When is it going to be about the player doing something as opposed to worrying about everybody else around him?
It worked out for Jordan Poole. Hopefully it can work out for James Wiseman. Frank Isola joining us, the New York Knicks in town tonight. And, Frank, superhero movies are now doing this whole gimmick called the multiverse where, 2 different realities could be happening at once. One of the multiverse sports realities I would have loved to seen, knowing what we know now about Steve Kerr and just what like a bright, positive presence he is. Like, what if he had actually taken that Knicks job? Do you think Kerr's delightful demeanor could have maybe risen the Knicks out of the muck, or would they have actually sucked them into their black hole? No one escapes, not even someone as delightful and charming and as steady in Steve Kerr as Steve Kerr really is.
Nope, he wouldn't be able to overcome what goes on over there at Madison Square Garden. I mean, think about it, guys. They have won 1 playoff series since 2001. That's why every time every Knicks fan sees Patrick Ewing, who's going through kind of a rough spell right now at Georgetown, they should apologize to him, because when Patrick was there, it used to be, hey, knucklehead, you can't win a championship for us this year, you can't get us to the NBA Finals. They've won 1 playoff series since 2001. And I remember living through that because Mike Tannenbaum, the football guy, was Steve's agent. I remember telling him, you guys are nuts if you're going to take this job. You think this is, nothing ever changes over there. And I think what happens is the money is so great. And I think the allure of the, New York, and of course, when everyone either you become a player that gets signed by the Knicks or acquired by the Knicks or a coach, you're required to say it's in your contract. You have to call it the Mecca of basketball at your press conference, so everyone plays along with that whole utter nonsense. And, even a guy like Phil Jackson, when Phil Jackson had his press conference here, he sat there and talked about what the Knicks mean to him and Red Holtzman. I'm sure that stuff does mean something, winning a championship there. And I kept thinking, yeah, Phil, but it also took them to pay you about $20 million a year to come here. So it wasn't the nostalgia. It wasn't the nostalgia that drove. It wasn't Holtzman, Reed, and Frazier. It was, Alexander Hamilton, Lincoln, and Benjamin Franklin, whoever's on dollar bills. I don't know.
Not to shift off the Knicks, but there is a team very close to them that's been a pie fight now for 2.5 years, and looks like it's about to resume the pie fight on Sunday when Kyrie Irving comes back.
Yep.
Are the Nets redeemable? I mean, let's just cut to the chase. Are they redeemable? Could they be that third team in the East that creates problems for people, or are they simply a lost cause?
You know what? I don't think they're a lost cause for this reason. And I said it over the summer when Kevin Durant, with all this nonsense with the trade, and then he came out that get fire. The report came out. He never said it, but he never denied it. The idea that he said to get rid of the head coach or the GM or trade me. That's why I laughed when the day when Steve Nash got fired and they asked Kevin Durant about it. He said, I was shocked. I'm thinking, what were you shocked by? That they listened to you? You can't be shocked by the news because you wanted the guy out. Anyway, the one thing about Kevin Durant is he's kind of a basketball nerd. And so everything that's going on off the court, on the court, the guy still plays and he competes. And, he defends, he rebounds, he passes out of double teams. He does all the things that you want from a superstar. He is, there have been moments in the season, even though they have a sub 500 record, where, he has 3 guys on him, and late in the shot clock, when everyone is saying bail us out, he does it. So because of him, I think they could do something, and Ben Simmons played he had his best game in basically 2 years last night in that win over Portland. But with Kyrie, here's the thing with Kyrie, it's always something. And that always something leads to not playing in games. So Kyrie Irving in 3+ seasons has played 111 games. What's interesting is Kawhi Leonard going into last night had also played in 311 games in 3+ seasons with the Clippers. Kyrie, the fans that love him here in the area because, he's from West Orange, New Jersey, and everyone talks about his sick handles that he has. That's great. He doesn't play enough. So you guys, everyone could defend him all they want. He doesn't play. Look at Steph Curry. He's out there all the time. Look at Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're out there all the time. If you have guys that don't play, it doesn't do you any good. So last year when he was when he wouldn't get the vaccination, he played 30-something games. Everybody said, "Wow, look how good he looks." Yeah, he's playing once every 5 days. he's well rested. I would hope he's playing well. But to answer long story short, because of Kevin Durant, I think they can do something. But they're going to have to, make a trade somehow, some way, and they're going to need Kyrie Irving to be on his best behavior, and that's obviously not on his best behavior, I should say, but to kind of be with the program, and that's a big question mark.
I'd like to thank Ray Ratto for being on his best behavior. Frank, thank you for allowing him to remain on his best behavior. We appreciate that.
Can I ask Ray a question? Can I ask him a question?
We got a boogie, but yeah, sure, real quick.
Ray, who do you like in the World Cup?
Probably Brazil, although I think France has the best outside chance, but it's going to be a World Cup that you it's sort of a guilty pleasure because of all.
I know it's. I hope if the U.S. or Mexico or Canada can't win, I hope it's Belgium. That's my team.
If I'd known that would have been a soccer question, we would not have allowed it. Thank you, though, Frank. It's a pleasure. Thank you so very much. No beer at the World Cup. That should go really, really well.
My
Frank,
party will be beer.
Frank Isola, thank you so very much for joining us here on Damon and Ratto. We're brought to you by Fremont Bank. Full service banking, no compromises.